this special edition of Back to the City Minneapolis Music Conversation, I'm very excited indeed to be joined by Seymour Perspective.
What's up? How you doing?
I'm doing very well. And the occasion of today's special episode is you have a big show coming up.
Yeah.
Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
On being one of the 2017 Cedar. What is
the Cedar Commission artists? Yeah.
Yeah,
so
the Cedar Commission.
Formerly the 416 Commission.
Yep.
It's kind of their flagship program for kind of encouraging new work from artists that they think are cool and exciting.
Yeah.
So I was really honored to be considered one of those.
Yeah. Well, in this case, I think that they're correct.
Awesome.
And I've been excited about talking with you because the title of the show has conversation in it.
This is Prince.
Yeah.
As do the titles of your two most recent projects, in a way.
One thing I'd like to say is that I don't live in a prison, and I'm not afraid of anything.
So, Sex Tape in Purple, a conversation with Prince, and the name of the track that you contributed to Post Race with Guante and Catra K is, of course, a frank and honest conversation about race.
Yeah.
Look, we gotta have a conversation, talk it out. When it's time for visibility, gotta get out the house. And when it's time to make a move, we gotta walk it out. When people at the top talk, sloppy pull the bottom out. What are you all about? Go ahead and shout it out. See something, say something, go ahead and call it out. Before we didn't know we weren't alone, we're all around. If you believe the time is now, take a solemn vow, learn, support,
so
share.
Conversation is something that you're well versed in.
Yeah, absolutely. I try to be.
And very aware of the importance of.
Yeah.
Okay.
No doubt.
So it's not a coincidence, presumably, that conversation works its way into both of those titles.
Right.
What? Why conversation? What's important about conversation?
I really think it's about everything that we can change.
Yeah.
Starts with learning and sharing and educating and learning and sharing, and the first way that we can do that is by talking about it.
Yep.
We can ask questions, we can answer questions, we can interrupt. I think that's a big theme,
Yeah.
There's a lot out there. There's a lot of, can we curse? Is that a thing?
We absolutely
There's a lot of bullshit out there.
Is.
And it comes from men, it comes from all these social identities that are privileged, right? And we are in these spaces where most of the time it goes unchecked and unchallenged because people are dependent on these gatekeepers in certain positions, whether it be in a work environment or whatever, or we're kind of follow the rule of no politics, no religion, which is like such an obvious mode of social control. It's just like, don't talk about the things that are most important.
Absolutely.
And that really have an impact on how people live their lives and who gets hurt when,
Yes.
So let's talk about it.
So thank you for having that be your MO.
Yeah, for sure.
And talking the way in which you're talking about, so obviously Sex Tape in Purple, a conversation with Prince, we'll get into this in a bit more detail in a bit, but that's a kind of reworking of an earlier record of yours, Sex Tape. But the way in which you're having conversations or kind of eliciting conversation about sex on that, obviously it's fun, and there's a kind of irreverence about it, but the original subtitle to that is in parentheses, or my response to our morbidly underdeveloped sex education.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's everything, whether you're talking about politics, race, religion, or sex education.
No doubt.
You're very conscious of the need for eliciting this kind of engagement. So I'm glad you brought up the idea of interruption. Because a favourite song of mine, if on the one hand you've got the ideal of a frank and honest conversation, and then we'll really get into this very soon. Wonderful conversation with Prince, I think, in the reworking of Sex Tape. On the other hand, you have the song Dude Interrupted, which I think is a really important song.
See, you think too much. And do you think enough? Where'd you get that notion that an uninvited touch or unwanted attention or reciprocated lust was was something you had rights to, not worthy to discuss.
I'm just having fun, no harm, no foul.
But the male gaze watches over all like an owl.
What are you even talking about, bro? You really lost me.
Women dealing daily with some bullshit that is costly. Treated as
That's one of the ones that gets most cerebral and direct at times. So, for example, it highlights, like, you rap in the song. We're taught to say some dumb shit. Yes, we are. Right? Not question what we're saying. We're taught to keep the right type of people.
the right type of people at the top. It's historically obvious, so tell me, why would it stop?
Well, wow.
Right, now what? Let's question what's digested through the media construct. Break cycles of socialization, disrupt.
And when someone says
It's historically obvious. Tell me why
it would ever stop.
it would ever stop. It clearly is not stopping at the moment.
Right.
So, so you've got lyrics like that in the song, and it ends up with a call to break these cycles of socialization and disrupt. And when someone says something off, take the chance to interrupt.
Absolutely.
So you're eliciting conversation, but you're also putting out a call for interruption.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of the given dialogues.
Yeah.
So please interrupt me. And
well, you know, it's that discourse. You know what I mean? And there's kind of a discourse happening, whether we're engaging in it or not. Sometimes over our head, you know, through us, you know, around us.
Yep.
And you know, and I mean, in kind of passive aggressive ways, that's happening a lot too, in terms of racism and sexism and all these things. And of course, that doesn't just happen in Minnesota, but that's certainly a thing where you walk out of a store or something, and you're like, wait, what did they actually just say to me? You know, there's a thing there that happens, I think, with marginalized identities, right?
Yep.
So the interruption is, you know, there's this discourse, but sometimes the interruption is just including yourself in the conversation and getting involved in the discourse.
Yeah. So in what sense then what kind of interruption are you enabling? What type of interruption is happening when you and Prince engage in the conversation that you have?
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. You know, because what I realized was, as I was thinking about how I could honor Prince and these types of things, because all this happened in like a week or two, I kind of produced it and re-recorded all the stuff. And
so you had Sex Tape?
Sex Tape was already in
released.
the bag, right? That was out there, and this was
since June 2015.
Yeah, technically, right? We had the release in the fall and stuff, so it's kind of rolling out. But yeah, you know, essentially, you know, not quite a year later, right?
Yeah.
Maybe whatever, right? But I realized that was not possible without the work of Prince. If I really thought about it, you know, talk about somebody pushing a conversation, or interrupting the status quo, for that matter, and inviting in people that really consider like a more inclusive idea of sexuality. You know, if
in music, but outside of as an entertainer, or just in general,
I think,
culturally.
Well, culturally, as an entertainer, and you know, in his lyrics and in his music videos, I mean, in images of him in conversations, you know, there was like such an inclusivity and such a thing that was inherent in his work, which I think now would look very different. You know, if Prince was coming up now, it would look very different, but it still wouldn't be possible without Prince being Prince then.
Our interview is about to get very meta, because not only is there now songs like, you know, Kiss, for example, work their way into, you know, are in this reworked Sex Tape mixtape. There's also snippets of interviews of interviews from Prince, and the kinds of statements, the self-reflective statements that he makes about his art and his faith and sexuality and kind of politics, I think, as well. What are some of the... How did you select those? And what are some of the most significant, do you think?
It's going to get really meta, because I'm going to say that they spoke to me.
Yeah. They spoke to you even before the conversation began.
Yeah, you know, or maybe... Yeah, I mean, the conversation began when I was a little kid, jumping up and down on the bed, you know, singing these songs or whatever, and just allowing them to speak to me, and then responding in some way throughout my life, but then certainly as it boiled down with Sex Tape. And not even realizing that conversation was happening.
Because you'd release the record, of course.
Yeah.
And then Prince dies. You're saying you want to think about how to.
Yeah. How could I do that musically? And I don't want to just do something.
You already have been. Yeah. So finding a way to highlight that you have been. Is perhaps the most real and richest way. To do so.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
But he really is talking about this. So it's not just like musically. Some very specific statements that he's making that you selected from those interviews.
Yeah.
There's so much overlap with the message of, for example, Dude Interrupted. Prince and the conversation. In terms of like music impacting children and the culture, Prince is reflecting on that and on like him being a product of that, but also him interrupting that.
Yeah.
So in my favorite snippet of an interview that you use in that record, he's talking about the interviewer is questioning him about contemporary music.
Yeah. And
he highlights that there's negativity and entropy in content, and he's hesitant when she pushes him and says, "What are you talking about? Hip hop?" And he says, "No, I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the truth. And the truth is that either you enlighten or you discourage."
Yeah.
What was it that you were listening to in music today that made you say, "I've got to put some more stuff out there. You have to do this"?
Mainly, I sensed a great deal of negativity and entropy in the music. There's a disintegration going on that we really have to address. I think that we should address this as a community as to what it's doing to the culture.
Do you feel responsible as an artist for
much so.
what you're putting? Do you think that other people do?
No, I don't.
You talk about music that's going out there right now. Are you talking about any particular type of music that you don't think is such a positive influence?
Well, it's very obvious when you hear words and lyrics, whether they enlighten or discourage.
Okay, so hip hop gets slammed a lot. A lot of those acts that are, out there putting, is that what we're talking about?
It's not what I'm talking about.
No?
I'm just talking about the truth.
Just general?
Yeah. The truth is that you either are here to enlighten or discourage.
Obviously, you selected that, you put it in on the record.
Yeah.
Do you see that in reality? That each of us is constantly making, as for example, we're in that store, the convenience store, and we hear we have the thought perhaps as we're leaving, hang on, did they really just say that?
Yeah.
But we have a choice to enlighten, or even if not, just to just allow that discouragement, to allow that negativity and entropy, the lack of thought to continue.
Well, it's kind of like we can either enlighten or discourage in any or every aspect of our life, right?
Yeah.
And then there's how we react when there is enlightening or discouragement happening to us.
Yeah. So you're
do we
witness
accept
to
it or do we reject
there.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. And so when he continues, he says, he claims that there's a disintegration. I mean, it could almost be speaking to this contemporary moment.
Yeah.
There's a disintegration that we really have to address.
Yeah.
He says. And he's quizzed. How do you, if there is this negativity in popular music, Prince even a moment later says, yes, I feel responsible as an artist in a way. I'm kind of immersed in this, but I need to be self-reflective. I need to, at the same time, he says a bit later, all music is or can be inspirational. It's really important to recognize that and then have your gift be guided by something clear. Is that something that's there's definitely a lot of overlap clearly between your ethos and Prince's. How about in this respect then? Because he's talking perhaps about his faith there, and he's saying it's really important to have some clarity to guide, because the music's going to have an impact. The music is going to affect the culture. It might lead to further negativity and further entropy, or it could do something different. If it's going to do something different, there needs to be clarity beforehand. You have a lot of clarity, and we'll talk about the relationship between your music and your work as an educator and other aspects of your life. Is it necessary, do you think?
Yes. I mean, it's necessary to be clear about what you aspire to. To be clear about what you intend the impact to be, or what you hope for your own work, and the impact that it has in the world around you. Even as a human being, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. So
what effect? What ripple effect are my thoughts having as I walk down the street? Absolutely.
So two moves there. So even just as a human being, not just as an artist, and even your thoughts.
Absolutely.
Because they're like our mantra, our programming.
Well, if everything has an effect, you know, and scientifically we learn that like nothing is separated from anything else. Then why are our thoughts are not contained? They're echoing somewhere, and they certainly echo through our actions and intentions. And I think that's why people say knock on wood. That's literally, you're putting an intention, you're allowing that intention to literally resonate in the world around you. And I feel like that's just this small example of how our thoughts and actions can ripple in the world around us, you know? And people walk into a room and you get a vibe, right? Some people, you say they're a ray of sunshine, or they say they're a dark cloud. Well, where does that come from?
Excellent. So, and this can change, though.
Absolutely.
That seems to be, and it has to do with perspective. I'm going to quiz you about your name, but you already respond to the quiz in the song Other, which is on Guante and Big Cat's You Better Weaponize. So there's a lot more before this even, but Struggle in Progress, how you put that in a name, I can answer, but you got to listen close. It whispers in the winds from every sea.
It whispers on the winds from every sea and every coast. In hip-hop and art and thought, it's protected. The name I'm referring to is Seymour Perspective.
Don't box me in, don't call me out.
The name I'm referring to is Seymour Perspective. So, what's in a name? What is the significance of this name? Kind of perhaps riffing a little bit more and maybe highlighting some of the stuff that came prior to what I was quoting in SMT.
Absolutely. I mean, I think with Other specifically, I'm talking about Seymour Perspective in terms of our identities and how they overlap, and they come from different places, particularly as people of mixed race and ethnicity and mixed background, you know, whatever that is. When you're mixed, there's a lot of things at play. So it's seeing partly where the different aspects of our identities come from. And it's not necessarily like you're part this and you're part this, and it's not like a chocolate chip cookie where you can point out the chocolate chips and whatever, you know what I mean? Or the different color M&Ms for that matter, you know? But then even more than that, I think there's this thing that it's like, well, we got to look beyond that. It's very difficult on this tiny little planet for anyone to kind of be like purebred of anything that's not really a thing. That is absurd, you know. And of course, race is a figment of our
the
need to control.
Of course, it goes back.
Right,
to, race science.
All that stuff in the stuff about the skulls or whatever, right? All that stuff. The Zoids, right? So like, but then of course, how, you know, if race isn't real, well then racism still is, because it's a social construct.
Racism is very clearly real.
So I think that's part of it in terms with Other, and then even looking further. Okay, well, see more perspective is asking us to kind of see on those different levels,
Yeah.
Where are we coming from as individuals? What do we get high and mighty about in terms of what we think our identity is? How does it overlap and intertwine with identities of other people around us that we, maybe even have disdain for or whatever it is,
Yeah.
I'm kind of going on a tangent now, but...
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, to me, because I was imagining you were talking about if someone comes in a room, you get a vibe from them immediately. Mm-hmm. So, one might wonder, well, what if one happens to be the kind of person that one gets a bad vibe from, a victim of this negativity and entropy that Prince was talking about?
Right.
What if one finds oneself in that situation? And I think that you have a hopeful message where if we can see more perspective, if we're able to adopt these different lenses, critical thinking and perception, and the ability to look at the truth from different perspectives, and to recognize that whatever one thinks the truth is at any given moment is probably not the is not the whole truth, because we're just we're a part of this big puzzle.
Right. Let's say this is the
skull.
Truth.
Okay.
This skull is the truth, right?
Yeah.
This object, whatever it is, that's the truth, right?
Yeah.
And I can see that it's clearly the truth, and it is the truth,
right?
Right. But you see something completely different.
Yeah.
And it's actually also the truth.
It's also there.
Because this object is still this object, right?
And if we can
this is still the truth.
And if only we can have a frank and honest conversation about our perception of the object, as opposed to a shouting match.
And let's really try to understand what the issues are, because I think we take the easy route sometimes. It's easy to point a finger. It's easy to disengage from. It's an abstract concept. It's an abstract concept that there are systems at work around us that work through culture and society and play out, in classrooms and textbooks. And that passive aggression and microaggressions and these types of things. That's pretty abstract.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to say, no, you're an asshole. It's easy to say, no, because you can have a frank and open, frank and honest, whatever.
Frank and honest conversation.
Right.
And you can interrupt the dude. Like in the song, Dude Interrupted, the dude is interrupting you too and saying, hang on, man, like you're losing me.
Yeah.
So, we've got two characters, and, he is the dude, that we're hopefully interrupting, is saying, I'm just having, this is like he's going clubbing, what up though, I'm just a dude on the grind is the opening line, and then once we're a little bit into this conversation, he says, I'm just having fun, no harm, no foul, to which you respond, but the male gaze watches over it all like an owl, which is a great response. But then I think it's also great that then as you have this pretty natural dialogue continue, like he highlights how kind of intellectual and abstract your comment is.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, it's true. It is, these are abstract things to talk about. We can. It's also easier to talk about a skull, on the table, as opposed to really focus on, what are like the real issues. What are the truths that we need to recognize at the moment.
Well, so let's say you interrupt, right, and they get immediately defensive because they said something. You're just pointing out. You said something that relates to a way in which people are actively oppressed and put down and dehumanized and or all of that, right?
Yep.
And they get defensive, but it's not about them. It's not about them until they say, I don't care. Right. And then it's like, well, okay, you're being an asshole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But until that point, this is just a system that's working around us, and maybe you have not had the chance to learn about or experience in that other way.
Yeah.
So that you can kind of see into it a little bit.
But here is your chance.
Yeah.
at the intersection of education and entertainment.
Yeah.
Which is
so.
a recurring focus I see in the various different projects. And so I was just highlighting in Dude Interrupted, you kind of recreate this very realistic conversation.
Yeah. Someone like me, talking to someone like someone you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Some dude.
Right.
And so what's going on there? How did you make the decision to recreate that type of conversation within the song? What's the purpose of that?
Yeah, I think part of it is to offer like a toolkit almost.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's probably the most cerebral, kind of straightforward. This is the sociology at work here. This is the social justice concept. You know what I mean?
It's kind of peppered with that.
Yeah. So I feel like, okay, here are some tools for these conversations.
Yeah.
Because I've had these conversations, and these are talking points that can be helpful.
Yeah.
This is a tone even that you could take, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Actually,
so I think that's kind of the idea. Is this is how it can be interrupted.
Yeah.
And this is how, hopefully, and you talk about that hope, certainly you can affect change.
Yeah.
Through conversation.
I strive for originality in my work, and hopefully it'll be perceived that way.
Yeah. What up, though?